Hi, Keep the Folks. I'm Pete58 with Shadow the Hedgehog, and we've got another edition of Bad Movie Reviews. Now, this movie is called Meet the Hallowheads. If you're from another country, probably in maybe Europe or Australia, you might, if you've actually seen it, you might know the movie is called Life on the Edge. Now, this movie came out in 1989. It stars Juliette Lewis, John Glover, Richard Portnow, Lightfield Lewis, and Nancy Met. And it's not very long. It's only like 86 minutes. I went to Rotten Tomatoes. It didn't have a rotten score, but it had an audience score of 46%. Which I take to mean like half the people that's seen it actually enjoyed it. It's PG-13, and it was directed by a makeup artist, what's his name, written here, Thomas Berman. Now, Tom Berman, as he's known as, this was the only movie he ever directed. He's a makeup artist, and you probably wouldn't know his name unless you looked at the ending credits of something like Nip Tuck, Grey's Anatomy, Scrooged. He's a very talented makeup artist. And this was the only movie he ever directed. You know, rounding out the cast is Anne Ramsey, Mrs. Fratelli, or Ma Fratelli from The Goonies. This was her last movie. She's only in it like a few minutes. And Bobcat Goldthwait. He's in it very briefly as well, so they're more like cameos than being a part of the cast. Now, this movie came out in '89. And the only reason I watched this movie was probably because of Juliette Lewis. You know, any kid growing up then had a thing for her. She was really hot, and you know, and she's in this movie. She's probably the biggest star in it. You know, John Glover, who plays the father, Mr. Hollowhead. You might know him from Smallville. He played Lex Luthor's dad, Lionel Luthor. Everybody else you probably might have seen in other stuff, but nothing real big. That's not to say that the movie wasn't an attempt to be something, because from what I read, Terry Garr, Dan Aykroyd, a lot of people were going to be associated with this film, but for some reason or another, they didn't do it. But now, to say it's a bad movie, I don't know, because if you ever watch this movie, at the end, you're going to be like, what the hell did I just watch? Well, and I've heard people describe it as like sort of a sci-fi because it takes place in a distant future. It's horror because there's a couple of like one graphic scene of violence, and most of it's just disgusting. You know, I'll get to that in a minute. But, you know, it's like, what the hell is this movie? When you watch it, it's, you know, you got to kind of go with it with an open mind, because what the attempt here is, it's a dystopian black comedy. Meaning it takes place in a screwed up society. If you don't know what dystopia means, and I doubt you're watching this, but anyway, it takes place in a distant future, and it's this day in the life of a family. There's 3 kids, 2 teenagers, one of them's Juliette Lewis, and then there's a young kid about 10 or 12, and basically the head of the household, John Glover, Henry Hollowhead, his boss is coming over for dinner. Now, if you've ever watched like TV Land and you've seen all these 50s TV shows, oh, the boss is coming over for dinner, I need that big promotion. That's basically the story. That's the plot, is that the big head honcho at United Umbilical, which is a major corporation in this movie, the boss is coming over because Mr. Hollowhead, he wants a promotion, so he invited Mr. Crabneck, the boss, over. And the movie's, like I said, the movie's weird. I mean, besides the plot, which you kind of gotta humor it, because it is like, you know, a 50s TV show. When you see how the mom's dressed and the dad's dressed, it's like, you know, like I said, unless you watch some of these 50s TV shows, the plot may not, it's like, why is that the plot? You know, because a lot of screwed up shit happens in this movie. The soundtrack's pretty good, and it's very disgusting if you're into disgusting stuff. You know, everything's like a mutant. The food is just stuff. At one point early on in the movie, the youngest and his friend, Joey, they come in the house, and he has a black eye, the youngest kid. And his mom's like, you know, what happened, and blah, 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 blah. And they basically stick this hose on his eye to fix the black eye, and it's really unsettling. You know, half the time I'm waiting for a music video to start, you know, because it's almost like this whole thing is like an acid trip. you just gotta kind of go with this movie, because there's no real it's the plot of him trying to get his promotion by bringing the Mr. Crabneck over for dinner, and you meet him not right away. He just, because the movie starts with him talking on this hose, and he's talking to his wife, and you meet the kids, and then Dad comes home and he's bringing Mr. Crabneck. And right away, this guy is a piece of shit, Mr. Crabneck. I mean, he basically abuses the son, trying to show him how to fight. And, Mr. Hollowhead, Henry, he's like, well, no, we don't do that. He's very, like, kind of soft. It's the mom. She's the tough one. Because after dinner, things get really violent. I mean, he keeps making overt passes at his wife, grabbing her and stuff, and she's just trying to like push him, like, no, just stop. And he kind of alludes to the fact that it's either you do me or your husband's not getting a promotion. Basically, it gets worse off from there, and it gets really violent. There's just one fight, and it's basically Crabneck versus the entire family. Now, the other two older kids, they go off to a party, and so it's just mom, dad, and a little boy. And man, Mr. Crabneck, he gets his fingers cut off, he gets his face melted, he gets electrocuted. They spent $5 million on this movie, roundabout. Like, I think it's 4.8. 4.8 sounds about right. It had a $5 million budget, basically. And, they spent it all, I think, every penny on, like, all the crazy shit that happens. I mean, you see this guy, Richard Portnoy, if I'm not saying it right, I'm sorry. His fingers get cut off, and it's just like, oh my God. I mean, I remember seeing this as a kid on cable, and, it's like it has a PG-13 rating, There's not a lot of cursing. It's just a real disgusting, violent stuff. I think that knocks it up there, because there's no real overt sex. I mean, the guy acts like a perv. He goes into the bathroom, Mr. Crabneck, right before dinner, and he starts sniffing the mom's pantyhose. It's like, geez, this guy's like, right away, he's the bad guy. And you see this family, the characters are likable. Some are creepy, but mom, dad, and the three kids, you kind of like them. The oldest brother, he's a teenager, but he looks like he's 40. I mean, he's got like this bad receding hairline. It's like, geez. He doesn't look like it. You kind of see it in the face, but he's got the head of like a 40-year-old. Juliette Lewis, like I said, when I was a kid, she was the only reason why I watched it to begin with. I mean, she was in a lot of great stuff around that time. At Christmas Vacation, and other stuff too. And so she was one of the it girls of the late 80s, early 90s. And, that's what, like I said, that's what drove me to watch it when I was a kid, and the first time I saw it, I was, I kind of got it, because they keep making, these references to something called The Edge, which is the alternate title, Life on the Edge. And the reason why it's called that is because throughout the movie, they keep referencing something called The Edge. The two kids, they scare each other with a story about how this kid, he got pushed off the edge, and it's just this thing they have to live with, I guess, at the edge of the world or something. It's a very bizarre, kind of setting. They talk about this thing called rationalists. How people in the 50s talk about communists like it's a great evil thing. Well, in this movie, in this future, it's rationalists. Mr. Crabneck talks about his ex-wife being a rationalist, and oh God, it apparently was horrible. Apparently that's a bad thing. Being rational, which I think some people can understand that today. Everything's controlled by, I guess, United Umbilical. That's the major corporation everybody talks about. The kids have to go to see Anne Ramsey. For one of the hoses keep getting clogged in the kitchen, because everything is hoses, and whether you're talking on the phone, you're making dinner, just hoses about everything. And then there's constant references to pumping, not just sexual references either. It's like pumping is part of the language, the slang or whatever, because it's just if they found out what we did, they would pump us, or and one of the kids talks about, it's a dystopian future controlled by a United Umbilical Corporation of hoses. So, everything's in reference to that. They keep Grandpa in the basement. I don't want to forget that. And they don't really. He's kind of a perv, I think, because nobody wants to feed him. And Juliette Lewis, early on, she draws the shortest straw and has to feed him. And they kind of have like this sympathetic music, but at the same time, he keeps grabbing at Juliette Lewis, and it's like a little awkward. It's like, oh God, man, no wonder they keep him in the basement. It's the guy just grab assing, and his granddaughter. I mean, the guy's kind of out of it. It's like he's just, like, ugh. And they don't, say what's wrong with him, other than I guess he's just an invalid. He's old, and they just keep him in there, and they're not supposed to be keeping him because they talk about, if get caught keeping Grandpa, they're going to get pumped. Everything's about getting pumped, but not really in a good way. So they keep him down there, and they feed him some kind of jelly or jello kind of stuff, some gelatin through a giant syringe, and that's what he eats. And they keep him down there, and nobody wants to do it, but it's like taking out the garbage. Somebody has to do it, and throughout the movie, the kids keep threatening each other. I'll tell on you. No, please don't. Well, then you gotta feed Grandpa for my next 3 turns. That's... So it's pretty bad. He's down there for a reason. They don't elaborate as to why, and I'm afraid to ask why, now that I think about it. But, he's just grab-assing. I think that might be what it is. They just don't want to, because he might be going after the boy, too. I don't know. Like I said, they don't elaborate on too much. It's like a 50s TV show. Worrying about the, making everything perfect for the boss, and the wife kind of, she's a little bit superior to the Henry Hallowhead, because when the fight breaks out, she's the one that that does a lot of the damage. She's the one that fights back the most. Probably because she was the victim. Despite all this, they try to, it's a black comedy. They try and make light of everything. Dad's just like, oh man, woe is me, and the mom's a little bit more there with it, and the little boy, he's just all over the place. The best way to describe this movie is just, it's, I guess, a black comedy. Dystopian sci-fi future aside, it's, most people probably won't get it. I I got it a little because, when I was a kid, I'd seen some of those TV shows when they were still on Nick at Night, like Father Knows Best, Donna Reed, and you kind of got that vibe from it if you were familiar with some of those shows. And, that's what you get from it because, it's like, honey, I'm home, and the wife, Cindy, she wears this, this lovely 50s looking dress, we get a montage and see some other clothes with Juliette Lewis, and that looks more 80s. They show her wearing 2 or 3 different things, and a lot of the stuff, like I can remember seeing, actual girls wear it back in the 80s and early 90s, stuff like that. So, there's still a little bit of that 80s vibe to it, because it was made in 89, and, but they try to keep it as like, as a spoof of the 50s. If you're into bizarre films, that it's like I said, it's not really a bad movie. I just hear people call it bad. The few people that I've met that have actually seen this movie, because they're just like, it didn't make any sense. Some people just didn't get it. The 46% score, audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, that I would probably agree to that. I could see only maybe half of people getting it. Because it's just one of those obscure films. The guy who directed it, Tom Berman. I think he's about 70 years old now, but I think he's still working as a makeup artist. I think his Grey's Anatomy, that's the most recent thing he was doing. And, he's never directed anything else. And I think that's kind of a shame, because I think if he had done maybe a couple more movies, he might have picked up, a good, way to do it. It's not that the movie is bad. Like I said, the plot's a little strange, and it's more satire, spoofy kind of thing. It's like I said, you might like it, you might not. It's like I said, I read a review and it said, what the hell did I just watch? And the first time I saw it when I was like 10 or 12 or something, I remember thinking, like, what the hell was this? It had like a happy ending. It's kind of off from the plot because He's he's trying to hide, the fact that he hurt his boss, and then the police come in, and I don't know, it's just like I said, it's more silly than anything. Don't take the movie too seriously, because it'll just annoy you if you do, But this is, I don't think it's a wasted 86 minutes. I'd watch it again. I did watch it again. I watched it recently. It had been a long time since I'd seen it, because it's just one of those films. It's on YouTube. It was uploaded about 4 or 5 years ago, so it's probably still up there. I only watched it the other day again. I don't know if it's on Netflix or Hulu. If it is, I'll put it in the description below. But I'll add the YouTube link to it if you want to watch it. Quality's okay, but it's free, and they haven't taken it down. It's been up for a couple of years, so if you're interested, give it a watch. You might like it. I mean, it's not bad. It's just bizarre. Very gross. But you like the characters, and the soundtrack's pretty good. They even have a rap song with the Hallowheads in it. It's I don't know if there's a music video. I doubt it. I'm not sure what the estimated gross is of the movie. I could probably find out, and I'll throw that in there too on the bottom. But yeah, I never seen a movie quite like it. So that's not to say there aren't more movies like it, just not by this guy, Tom Berman. But try it. I mean, you're either going to hate it or like it. And, there's a lot of stuff on Netflix and Hulu right now that is worse than this movie and more annoying. Wouldn't you agree, Shadow? Yes. So you liked the movie? Yeah, Juliette Lewis was hot. Yeah, well, she was. So you ready to spin dash us out of here? Yep. Alrighty. Hi, keep